You're listening to In Good Health, the trusted news source for medicine, science, and technology. I'm Elizabeth Westfield.
I'm Mayan Vasta Betancourt.
And I'm Greg Johnson. This week, everything you never knew about schizophrenia.
Everyone here who's listening can be made psychotic, whether you're isolated for 3 months in a dark hole or you're giving psychotomimetic drugs.
But first, have we cheated natural selection?
If you consider what is natural would have been never inventing fire, never leaving Africa, never getting in a plane. And we're really fine with all those things.
All that and more this week on In Good Health.
Amazon Pharmacy presents Painful Thoughts.
20 more minutes to kill in the pharmacy before my prescription is ready. Maybe I'll grab some deeply discounted, out-of-season Halloween candy. I never had a chocolate pumpkin with raisins before. Those were raisins, right?
Next time, use Amazon Pharmacy. We deliver. And no, those were not raisins. Amazon Pharmacy. Healthcare just got less painful.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. Let's start 2026 with a hard truth. There's no perfect time to build the future you secretly dream of, and there's no time to waste. With support from a Talkspace therapist, you can make this the year you bravely go out and grab what you need from life, whether that's outer rewards or inner peace. Just go to Talkspace.com to be matched with a licensed online therapist. You can start messaging with your therapist right away and schedule live virtual sessions over video, audio, or chat. Your Talkspace therapist can help you create personalized strategies for making the changes and achieving the goals most important to you. Talkspace accepts most insurance with an average copay of $15, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com and save $80 with code SPACE80. That's SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Researchers estimate that modern humans have been on Earth for around 300,000 years. And though we've been constantly evolving throughout all this time, the study of biology is relatively new. In fact, we only discovered DNA in the 1860s and didn't realize its importance until the 1900s. Despite everything we know today and all of our modern discoveries, Dr. Steve Reilly, an assistant professor of genetics at Yale School of Medicine, says the field itself is still in the beginning stages.
A lot of what we do is just descriptive, is that this is the patterns we see. If we break this, this is what happens. And so that isn't even that much towards some grand theory yet. That's just saying, once we actually get into the systems of biology, how does it even work? And just describing it is the first step before you get to complex laws and even theories.
To many people, the term theory sounds like the start of research, and in many cases it is. However, there are a lot of theories that we accept to be true because no one has been able to disprove them. This includes the theory of relativity and natural selection.
Natural selection is the idea that the driving force behind something changing is something better comes along, something more fit, survival of the fittest. You might change your mind because someone keeps annoying you and poking you and you don't want them to poke you anymore. It has nothing to do with natural selection. Natural selection says, some offspring of an animal is born, it is better at surviving or having more offspring. That will become more and more common. And so that is the natural selection force that drives a type of evolution.
In other words, natural selection is the engine that drives evolution. But if we think about medical issues many of us face today, such as asthma or bad eyesight, don't those seem like conditions natural selection would have let die out? Not necessarily. Reilly says the process works smarter, not harder.
It's survival of the fittest for your environment. And my environment and your environment has contact lenses and glasses in it. And so there's no selective pressure anymore, right? If we took them out, I bet you would see over time better eyesight start to come up. Also, most people don't lose their eyesight until they're quite old. And thus if you lose your eyesight at 80 or 70 or 60, it doesn't change how many children you have. It doesn't impact it at all. And so natural selection can't act on stuff in really old age.
Instead, we can look at conditions that threaten the lives of kids, like childhood cancer. Reilly says it's a rare disease because natural selection has helped wipe out most cases so that people can grow old enough to procreate. Which brings us to another common misconception regarding natural selection. Many of us assume that survival of the fittest means surviving physical challenges such as extreme weather or hungry animals. But Reilly says that when you look at our DNA, physical threats aren't the driving factor, especially in the modern world.
You inherit 2 copies of your genome from your parents, and it's essentially random which ones you get. But we can look over large populations and say, are there places where it doesn't seem to be random, where this one copy just occurs a lot more than it would by chance? And if it keeps showing up, it means it must have some likely benefit, that the people that have that do better or have more kids. And so it shows up more than every other part of the genome. And when we ask, okay, what are these potentially selected or adapted parts of the genome doing? They're largely involved in 2 main processes. They're involved in every single body system, but essentially 2 the most.
One is immunity, our ability to fight off bacteria and viruses.
We just have the COVID pandemic to think that a strong virus has a really big impact on if you survive or not. And that can strongly shape who's around to make the next generation.
And while you may think the second most occurring gene sequence has to do with intelligence or strength, Reilly says it actually has to do with our diet.
You can imagine that as humans left Africa and populated all the world, what they ate was vastly, vastly different. Someone eating a diet of fish and sea creatures has a very different both caloric intake and like nutrient intake than someone eating grains and grasses and rice and things like that. And so our body has done a lot of work in different populations to adapt to what the common diets were in those areas. Mainly because it always comes back to how many kids you have. A lot of that is about getting enough nutrients to have babies and have more kids and lower the time in between kids.
And though we like to think of ourselves as much more complex than other mammals, natural selection and evolution doesn't always mean adding to our DNA. In fact, the genetic instruction book on how to make a human is shorter than some other animals.
It's smaller. It has stuff removed from it. And that can actually also increase complexity. And it also is a little humbling that there's other work around that's talked about this, that very small changes can have relatively big differences if they add up across the genome. And that at the end of the day, we're actually not that different biologically from chimps and other mammals.
Reilly and his colleagues recently published a paper in the journal Science, which looks at genes that seem to have been deleted from humans. They stumbled across regions of the genome that occur in every other mammal, except for us.
And so it's a little stretch of DNA, maybe just 1 or 2 base pairs long, that if you look in mice, if you look in monkeys, if you look in dogs, cats, all have this. And then you look in humans and it's just not there, which is surprising because if you have DNA that's been kept around for 200 million years and then just poof, it's suddenly gone, that would actually, like, if I just heard that, I would say, that seems really important. We probably shouldn't get rid of it. And if we got rid of it, it must be for hopefully a good purpose.
The team decided to test how these missing genes operate in other animals and discovered that many of them affect the brain. Reilly says this difference is understandable because we like to think that our human brain is one of the things that separates us from other living beings. But still, they wanted to see what would happen if humans did have these genetic sequences.
And so we actually took neurons that don't have this sequence, it's been deleted. And what we did was we genetically engineered the DNA back in. So they were human neurons, except for this one little spot in the genome. In that spot, they looked like chimps or dogs or cats or any other mammal. And what we saw is that those neurons had a completely different set of genes that were expressed. They sort of changed their identity in terms of what genes were being turned on and turned off. And a lot of those were related to brain functions like myelination, which is how your nerves get protected and how fast the neurons actually grow.
Researchers have known that human neurons grow much slower than other primates, just like how our physical growth is much slower than other mammals.
There's a lot of theories about why this happens, and this is the colloquial theory, just sort of, we have an idea, we have a guess. And some of them are just that because of the complexity, we need to slow things down. Because of the size, that essentially we have these stem cells and they can divide in two and make more stem cells. They can make one neuron and stay a stem cell, or they can make two neurons, but then there's no more stem cells. If you make two neurons, you're done. There's no more after that. And so if you keep them longer as stem cells and you slow that process down, you can get more stem cells, which eventually makes tons of neurons.
But if you speed that process up, you run out of stem cells and aren't able to make as many neurons, which one theory suggests would lead to a smaller brain. But Reilly's study is only in the beginning stages of this research. There's many more steps and obstacles before we can reach an answer.
I want to be clear that we actually don't know that change is actually impacting anything in a human, because to actually say that definitively, we'd have to find a human that didn't have that deletion. And that we will never do. We've never seen a human that doesn't have the deletion. And making a human that has it would be unethical and unsafe. And so we have to use sort of proxies to get at this, which is why things like this stay theories instead of becoming laws. That it's hard and we have to sort of move very slowly using neurons in a dish.
And then moving the research into mouse models, which is where Reilly's team is headed next.
That's something we're really excited to do, is that to put that into a mouse, essentially to take it out of a mouse and say, what happens here? The other hard part is that the genome is really, really big. And so we didn't find just one of these, we found around 10,000 of them. And so likely each one might play a really small part in a really complex process. It's sort of like taking one brick out of a building. You might not notice until you take a bunch out or you change a lot of them to say, oh, this is actually something different now. And so that's one of the hard things that we have to try to start to figure out ways to, if one doesn't work, how do we genetically engineer, hundreds of these changes into a mouse?
If they find that humans did have these gene sequences at one time in history, it would have been centuries ago. It's possible there's a driving force that triggered natural selection to remove it from our gene pool. But just like how we're able to speed up evolution within the confines of a lab, modern medicine and invention has allowed us to play a main role in natural selection.
That kind of sounds scary, but that's sort of the whole story of humanity, moving much faster than natural selection happens. Natural selection happens on the order of hundreds of thousands to tens of thousands of years, if not longer. But humans have kind of escaped that because a lot of our inventions have nothing to do with biology. They have to do with tools and sharing ideas and invention, and that changes our environment.
Which begs the question, are we cheating natural selection or working hand in hand with it for the greater purpose of surviving?
50 years ago, a lot of people said, yeah, using a calculator is cheating. And now it's, nope, that's just part of the tools of being a human. If you consider what is natural would have been never inventing fire, never leaving Africa, never getting in a plane. And we're really fine with all those things. So I think it's I think it's very natural for humanity to invent and use those inventions. Hopefully we do it carefully.
You can find more information about all of our guests on our website, ingoodhealthpodcast.org. For more behind the scenes, follow In Good Health Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our editor-producer is Kristen Farah. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. I'm Elizabeth Westfield.
Protein is now at Starbucks, and it's never tasted so good. Try our all-new caramel protein lattes with up to 31 grams of protein and options with no added sugar.
Level up, level up, level up, level up, level up.
Level up your drink at Starbucks.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Coming up, how Hollywood's version of mental illness harms patients when In Good Health returns. Our society has made a lot of progress in destigmatizing certain mental health issues like anxiety. But this trend hasn't yet reached the full scope of mental disorders. Many of us only know what schizophrenia looks like from movies. But Hollywood's perspective usually only shows one aspect of this disease.
Schizophrenia is a severe and often chronic brain disease that affects all of the things we take for granted. The way we think, feel, act, use language, the way we integrate internal and external stimuli, and also the sense of ourselves and the world.
That's Dr. Christoph Carell, a professor of psychiatry at Yale School of Medicine in New York. He says a common misconception is that people with schizophrenia are always out of control. In reality, the symptoms come and go, often triggered by different stressors.
Our brain needs to work like an orchestra in synchrony. And that's not happening in people with schizophrenia. There may be one instrument that's very loud and noisy and really gets all of the attention, and that can lead to misinterpretations. You hear voices maybe, see things, and then think somebody's out to get you, or you can't trust anyone. Also, there are symptoms where people are not interested in doing anything anymore because they have a problem with the reward system.
These various symptoms stem from the fact that schizophrenia is different for each patient.
Like when you have multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease or even another condition, it doesn't always manifest the same way in every patient. So the symptoms reside somewhere in the brain. We're not entirely sure exactly which areas of the brain, but it seems to be a specific area which is called the striatum, but there are other areas too. But then the way this interacts with different neural networks in the brain may be different, and it's different due to genetics, it's different due to the environment.
But there is a common thread of which types of symptoms occur. Carell refers to these two categories as positive and negative symptoms. Positive means that there's overactivity of the brain, which leads to delusions and hallucinations. The negative ones refer to emotions patients should have but don't, which Carell calls the 5 A's.
Amotivation, asociality, affective flattening, alogia, which means that they are not talking much, and anhedonia, not really having fun anymore. Now, this could look like depression, but it is different because people generally don't suffer under this. They just feel, I don't have a life, I don't have friends, I don't care. So when you ask them, are you sad? Are you hopeless? They would say, no, I just don't care, because there's not enough juice. Like the dopamine is basically our pleasure hormone, and in some areas it's too little. So there seems to be an underfunctioning of certain brain neurotransmitters like dopamine in one area and an overfunctioning in another area.
Schizophrenia isn't solely genetic or environmental. The leading theory suggests that it's a mixture of the two.
So basically, we all are born with a certain makeup genetically, and that makes you more vulnerable or less vulnerable for diabetes, for example, hypertension, or schizophrenia or depression. But then with early life events, particularly life trauma, can bring out disease genes, or also with continued stressors, there can be then an interaction bringing out the genes. Everyone here who's listening can be made psychotic, whether you're isolated for 3 months in a dark hole or you're giving psychotomimetic drugs, but some people are more protected and it takes more stress than others.
In most people, the disease begins to present in mid to late 20s. It starts out with cognitive issues like disorganized thoughts and jumbled speech, which is often mistaken for ADHD. The negative symptoms follow, meaning that patients appear more depressed, anxious, and withdrawn.
And again, it can be very hard to know what the course will be later, because it could also be an anxiety or a depressive disorder. The way where it then starts to diverge into potentially schizophrenia is these beginning positive symptoms. People are misinterpreting stimuli. They're seeing things, they're maybe hearing voices or noises. They have some overvalued ideas, not being sure anymore whether they are safe, without being fully psychotic. And then later it develops into full psychosis, which means I'm sure these voices are talking to me. It's not in my head. I'm sure people are out to get me.
This is when patients begin to talk to themselves, which is often the stage that's portrayed in movies. Carell's research shows that the average duration of patients' first untreated psychotic episodes in the U.S. is 3 years, meaning these people are waking up every day feeling apathetic towards life and unsafe in their own homes. Carell says the only way to combat these symptoms is to get people treated early and consistently.
We treat mental health conditions basically with a biopsychosocial model. We think it's caused biopsychosocially and it also can be treated. So we give psychoeducation, talk therapy, group therapy, and also psychosocial interventions to help people maybe go back to work or school. But that's augmentation treatment. The key is really antipsychotic therapy, because without medications, patients are very likely to have a chronic relapsing illness.
Carell says that with each new episode, medication will become less effective for 1 in 6 patients.
They have more symptoms. There's more suicidality because people get really very stressed by these psychotic symptoms. And there's burden of disease in terms of having not the ability to go back to school or work. Family and friends might detach from the patients because they've been so sick, and they lose a sense of agency and control over their life. So the most important part in the treatment is really relapse prevention,
which can only be achieved through medication. Family therapy can also be helpful, especially for keeping patients consistent with taking their prescribed doses, which Carell says is a main challenge for schizophrenia patients.
People stop because they think they're well. People forget because they have cognitive difficulties. People overvalue the side effects of the treatment rather than seeing the side effect of the illness, or they just don't feel sick at all.
When a patient forgets or decides to stop taking their medication, family members and physicians often won't realize that choice was made. One way to keep patients consistent is to administer the antipsychotic drugs through injection instead of taking them orally. This way, the doctor knows the exact day and hour that it's time for a new dose, instead of putting the full burden on the sick individual.
And then we can reach out to them or families to bring them back in. And there's still a lot of medication in the system that only very slowly goes out, so that there's a window of opportunity when we learn that they're non-adherent to bring them back and continue the care that is helpful for them to stay stable.
For those of us who have a loved one battling with schizophrenia, Carell says the best way to support them is to have empathy for what it means to live with this illness.
Don't fault them for, oh, you are lazy because you're not going out and you're not interacting. It's actually part of their disease. Or you're misinterpreting and sometimes you're agitated. It's part of their disease. So to have compassion, but then to support them to get care and stay in care. I think that's the most important piece. Be patient, but also firm enough and affirm that the patient should get care.
You can find more information about all of our guests on our website, ingoodhealthpodcast.org. For more behind the scenes, follow In Good Health Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our lead producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Greg Johnson.
In Good Health returns in just a moment.
Protein is now at Starbucks, and it's never tasted so good. Try our all-new caramel protein lattes with up to 31 grams of protein and options with no added sugar.
Level up, level up, level up, level up, level up.
Level up your drink at Starbucks.
Amazon One Medical presents Painful Thoughts.
Do they ever actually clean the ball pit at these kids' play gyms? Or is my kid just swimming in a vat of bacteria, catching whatever cootie of the day is breeding in there? A cootie that'll probably take down our whole family.
Luckily, with Amazon One Medical 24/7 virtual care, you can get checked out for whatever ball pititis you've contracted. Amazon One Medical. Healthcare just got less painful.
What does perfectly picked wellness sound like? Like Target's stylish new JoyLab activewear. And new flavors of Cloud Protein Popcorn. It sounds like wellness perfectly picked for you is now at Target.
Refresh your bathroom with big savings at Lowe's. Reimagine your bathroom with up to 40% off select faucets during our Bath Savings event. Need it today? Order by 2 p.m. for same-day delivery by 8 p.m. Shop for your bathroom refresh at Lowe's. We help, you save. While supplies last, selection varies by location. Same-day delivery on eligible in-stock items, subject to availability. Fees vary. Visit Lowe's.com/same-day delivery for full terms.
Medical notes this week. How cancer hijacks our internal clock. All of our cells are set to a specific time managed by the brain that tells them when to perform their functions. However, new research in cancer cell reveals that brain cancer takes advantage of this process. The tumor's able to sync up with the circadian clock and work its own growth into the natural daily processes of the body. These findings reveal why certain drugs affect brain tumors differently. Why we should be wary of dirt. Antibiotic resistance is estimated to only get worse in the coming years, taking away many of our options for effective medication. Pollution and changing land use can disturb this ecosystem and make it easier for the resistant bacteria in dirt to infect humans. Science may have found a cure for nightmares. Patients with dream anxiety disorder experience chronic nightmares where they're being chased or attacked by demonic beings. It can cause other mental distress, but thankfully, virtual reality may ease some of these scary dreams. Researchers used imagery rehearsal therapy to replace nightmare imagery with less frightening scenes. The participants reported lower levels of anxiety, nightmare distress, and nightmare effects by the end of the study. The research is published in the journal Dreaming. And finally, is alcohol ever good for you? There have long been claims that a glass of red wine at night can promote heart health, but a substance use researcher believes these effects have been overstated. The scientist reviewed hundreds of studies and found that even moderate drinking will reduce life expectancy. And that's Medical Notes this week. I'm Mayan Vostabetten.
Protein is now at Starbucks, and it's never tasted so good. Try our all-new caramel protein lattes with up to 31 grams of protein and options with no added sugar. Level up your drink at Starbucks.
Court.
Thank you for joining us this week and every week as we break down the science stories you need to know. You can find all of our past segments and guests on our website at ingoodhealthpodcast.org or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X for more behind-the-scenes content. Tune in next week for another edition of In Good Health.
Amazon One Medical presents Painful Thoughts.
Do they ever actually clean the ball pit at these kids' play gyms? Or is my kid just swimming in a vat of bacteria, catching whatever cootie of the day is breeding in there? A cootie that'll probably take down our whole family.
Luckily, with Amazon One Medical 24/7 virtual care, you can get checked out for whatever ball pititis you've contracted. Amazon One Medical. Healthcare just got less painful.
If you've been diagnosed with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, this is what it sounds like to be a million miles away. Imagine being a million miles away. Tremfya guselkumab, taken by injection, is a prescription medicine for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis who may benefit from taking injections or pills or phototherapy. With Tremfya, clearer skin is possible. In clinical trials, at least 70% of patients saw at least 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks. Results may vary. Tremfya is also indicated for adults with active psoriatic arthritis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Tap this ad to learn more about Tremfya, including important safety information.
What does perfectly picked wellness sound like? At Target, it sounds like gut health in a gummy. Like coffee made from mushrooms. And the perfect workout set. It sounds like protein hidden in chocolate bars, cloud popcorn bags, even water. From Rise Mushroom Coffee to David Bars, it sounds like wellness perfectly picked for you is now and new at Target.